In the last episode, we got a chance to drive this car around because it's more or less put together. Everything's kind of mocked up, but it is gonna be the last time that it is roadworthy for about a month or so. The plan now is to get it up on one of those lifts, start with pulling the engine and then all of the drivetrain components. When we looked underneath, it was pretty crusty, as you can imagine. So right now I'm outside waiting for a delivery of some underbody parts. I won't ruin the surprise just yet, but it should be here in just a few minutes. Well, I think you've guessed by now what our delivery was all about. It is some fresh front and rear subframes and all of the goodies attached, including disc brakes for the rear to get rid of the drums in there. So you guys haven't seen it yet, but underneath the car is a disaster. We are gonna be putting it up in the air and I'll show you some footage of it, but it is awesome that we found fresh, rust-free, might I add, subframes locally and for a really good price, which is actually keeping us below budget right now. So that's exciting. Another exciting thing is we are pretty close to getting the dash out. Corey's been working on that in pieces. I hope you know how to put all of this back.
Figure it out.
What do you got there?
I have the blower motor and AC parts that we are going to delete here. I just got the last screw out, so do you want to see what's going to be inside?
Yeah. Open it up.
Usually,
this hasn't been opened since 1997.
And usually they're always filled with some animal debris or something, and I'm assuming this is not.
Let's find out. I bet it's going to be perfectly clean. Oh, it's not horrible besides the nest that was formed in here. So let's go dump it. And while you're walking over there, I'll show you where that came out of. Right there, this giant gap. We're not going to need that stuff, plus it's weight savings. So pop that whole thing out.
Oh, look at that, the mess came with it.
And toss it. See, sorry whoever was living in there.
I don't know if you're allowed to do that.
As soon as Corey's finished up with that, we're gonna get the car on the lift, as I mentioned, and start tearing out the engine and the drivetrain. That means that for the next couple of weeks, we're gonna be working in our own little teams. Corey's gonna be tackling some of the chassis stuff. A couple of the marketing guys are gonna come out and help us with the body work and some of the exterior, and then I will be on the engine. As you recall, we're gonna be doing a hybrid build, so we're taking the 2.2 block out of that, putting 2.5 heads on it, doing a TDO4 turbo on top, and running basically wastegate pressure. So we hope to make about 50, 60 extra horsepower than what it came with from the factory, but it is going to take quite a bit of fabrication work and kind of a learning lesson in how to put one of these together. The good thing is all the info's out online. We have a lot of people that are willing to help us on forums and Facebook pages, so we're looking forward to that, but it is going to be a lot of work. I wanted to show you underneath the car while we've got in the air and before we get started on everything, because we have a lot of answers to some questions that I had when I was driving this, like why is there oil all over my driveway? Well, pretty much everything over here is leaking. You can see it's covered. Now the question is, why does it make horrendous noises? Probably because all of the heat shielding is cracked and loose and it'll all be coming off anyway. Exhaust leaks. Obviously, there are big holes in the exhaust like that, but that's okay because we're gonna be chopping this out, putting a 3-inch stainless exhaust on the whole thing anyway. And then the last question is, why would we replace the rear subframe? And this is why. Now that we can see everything that's wrong underneath the car, it's time to fix it, and that starts with pulling all of this stuff out. I'll probably chop the exhaust first, then start pulling drivetrain components. We're gonna be replacing it with all that stuff you saw at the beginning of the video, so that'll go in eventually. Obviously, transmission's gonna get pulled, and along with it, the engine. We know we're gonna be doing a hybrid build on it, so keeping that 2.2 block, cleaning it up, putting some new gaskets on so it doesn't leak quite as bad. So for now, we gotta pull all this stuff, get on the ground, and basically end up with a bare chassis. hanging out in the shop after hours trying to get a little work done on the Impreza, and truthfully I'm a bit behind. The weather outside's taken a turn for the worse, so that means snow is coming any day now, which means this thing has to be up and running soon-ish. So right now I've taken off the exhaust, I've started pulling brackets and things that we're not gonna need, toss those rattling heat shields that aren't going back in the car, and figuring out the next steps of what we're gonna do. The one thing I wanna say is the previous owner did not lie to me when he said the underside of this car is pretty solid. I mean, there's really not a whole lot of rust on the chassis itself. Looks like it's been protected by the coating. The worst of it's on the exterior, as you've seen, and on the suspension components like this, like the subframe here. This should not be a giant hole and it should not fall apart to the touch, but it is. The remedy for that is that pile of parts that I showed you before, the rust-free stuff. Now it's a matter of just dropping this whole thing rather than piece by piece and then replacing it with that. Before I do that, I think I'm gonna start disconnecting the engine on the top side, which means lowering the car. I've got the fluids drained, coolant, oil's gone, and basically we're gonna pull the 2.2 up through the top and then drop all the suspension down through the bottom. Looks a little different than last week, doesn't it?
You're really going lightweight with this, aren't you?
I am.
Radiator delete.
No radiator, no wiring, no coolant. No, everything's been disconnected on the top side. It is unbolted from the transmission. The engine mounts are unbolted. So theoretically, this is ready to come out. And truthfully, it's a really easy engine removal on these. If you're ever dealing with a 2.2 at home, I encourage you to do it yourself. Typically, you want to use an engine hoist, but when you have two strong young men like us, we might be able to actually lift this out. So we're going to try, and if not, get some reinforcements, and if that doesn't work, we'll have to get an engine hoist, but I think we can do it. We are 50% successful in this plan. So far, we got it off the bell housing, which is actually really easy. And then we realized that we're not as strong as we think we are. So now it's sort of planted right there. And I think we can get it. It's not that bad.
It's not that bad.
Are we admitting defeat that the two of us can't pull this engine out and we need to get a third person? Because I've got somebody in mind.
What if we strapped it and then...
Oh, yeah,
we
yeah.
have a better purchase. We're gonna investigate a little more, and then we'll let you know.
All right. Here's our contingency plan. It's Armand, and I think between the three of us, we're gonna be able to lift it up, get it on this table, and get it out of here without dropping it on anyone.
We grabbed the weakest dude in the shop because we were 99% of the way there, so we just needed the 1%.
Exactly.
That's not how any of this works.
1, 2. Forgot there was a oil pan. I'm like, oh yeah, we got it cleared. There's another. Armand, you didn't help at all.
Did what I could.
I want it on the record that we did, you're right, 99% of it. You were the 1%.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Perfect. So what do we learn here? We learned that you do not need an engine hoist. You just need several capable men that are able to lift the whole engine out. Oh, there you go. 5 spark plugs. Since the engine came out a little bit quicker than we thought, we've moved on to dropping that suspension, as I mentioned we were gonna do. So Corey is blasting away with some PB Blaster on the smaller bolts, the 12 and the 14 mils, just to get them loosened up. 17 and above should be pretty easy, so I'm gonna start cracking those open, and eventually we are gonna be dropping this whole thing probably tomorrow, but we'll get a good start on it today. We decided the best move is gonna be to drop the rear end as a whole, so we're disconnecting the drive shaft that's ready to come out, and then this whole assembly is just gonna drop down, theoretically anyway. The biggest hurdle is gonna be these subframe bolts. You see how bad this is rusted. We're hoping the threading is okay and they still come out fine. Let's do the drive shaft first. There's that. Back's good, and I will plug any leaks. Oh yeah, we're good. Cool.
Righty-tighty, lefty-loosey, not lefty-tighty mess it up.
Wait, is that tightening? Might be. Yes. Just want to make sure it's tight before you take it off.
What's that?
I think that was the wrench.
Bolt didn't break, which is interesting.
Yeah.
Does it feel crunchy in that?
Oh, it sure does. Oh, we got it.
Finally.
Just gotta kiss it. Just kiss it a little. Don't have to put all the weight on. I'm gonna show you the two subframes now that we got the old one out, and I'm gonna see if you could spot the difference. Now, this is the new subframe, came from Georgia, I believe. Has a little surface rust, but in pretty decent condition, especially when you compare it to what our winters did to this. I mean, it literally is not even being held on anymore by its own structure. So I'm glad we got this out of here. I'm actually surprised this car didn't collapse in on itself, given the state of the subframe and the suspension underneath. So this is going in the trash, and that's going in the car.
The next day,
It's so efficient.
It's peak efficiency, 360 degrees of efficiency.
So what are we taking off?
Well, we're dropping the...
Getting all dizzy.
I am dizzy. We're dropping all of the front subframe, transmission, everything all at once. So basically we're pulling off most of the major bolts, and we'll set it down on the wood pallets, take the remainder of the bolts off, and just like the rear subframe, the car should just lift up, everything else should remain. And then whatever we forget gets torn into pieces.
Yeah, we probably don't need it anyway. All right, there's one of two options here. I'm either way stronger than I think I am, or Minnesota Rust. Oh.
No, you're not way stronger than you think you are.
Let me come over there. Literally as I was saying it.
I snapped. It's in here somewhere.
Same thing, though, that
Yeah.
control arm.
Same exact bolt.
It's really dark.
19 millimeter bolt, snapped in half.
Well.
So far, so good. I think this is probably a good way to wrap up the episode. As you can see, we've got everything neatly underneath the car. It all came out relatively easy. We did have a couple of screw-ups like these 19 mil bolts that snapped that we're gonna have to fix. A couple in the back, but overall, because somebody took the time to undercoat this car, I don't know if that's factory undercoating or not. Whatever it is, we're thankful for it because the stuff came out pretty easy and the underside of the car is relatively clean, especially when you compare it to those subframes that we've pulled that are horrible. We've got the new ones pretty much ready to go in. We have to transfer a couple things over, and then on the front, utilize this turbo-specific subframe with a provision for the up pipe here. Speaking of the up pipe and the engine, we've got it hanging out there. We took it out, but haven't touched it since. I'm gonna be cracking into that, getting the intake manifold and the heads and everything off in preparation for our hybrid turbo build on that. And in general, we have to hurry up a little bit because this is the weather we're dealing with. Over the last couple of days, we've got our first big snow of the season. It's about mid-November, which means we have plenty of more snow to come, but I do want to get this car out here. I don't want it to be sitting on the lift for the next 3 months. So it's mid-November, we got about 6 weeks to finish this car up. I think we can do it if we put in a lot of hard work. Next episode, I'm guessing we're gonna be putting these subframes back up and digging into the engine. So you're gonna wanna stick around for that one. Like, subscribe, comment, do all that stuff because that helps us. The more eyes on these episodes, the more we're gonna put out, the more quickly we're gonna get them out to you. So we appreciate you guys watching. Stay tuned for the next one.